I'm Millie Weaver, and you're watching the Millennial Millie Show. So, what is going on in the midterm election right now? I mean, it seems to be utter chaos. It used to be that elections could happen like on the same night, and now it seems like we don't get results until days after election night, specifically in states like Arizona, where Arizona has had a history of having problems with voting machines. Whereas Florida, where Ron DeSantis won by a landslide, their votes all came in and we got that result on election night. Well, we're going to be joined by Ivan Rakelin. Now, Ivan, thank you so much for joining me here today. Ivan has done a lot of research into politics. I mean, he knows what happens after certain results happen. And Ivan, you've been telling me a little bit about what the potentialities are if the Republicans take the House or even the House and the Senate. What do you think it looks like we're going to see happen?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Millie. Hopefully, third time's a charm, and you can actually hear me fine. I know there's a little bit of a delay, but bottom line is, what I think is going to happen is after we secure the Republican majority, which it seems as though that's the case because Kevin McCarthy has already put out there that the Republicans are going to win the majority in the House. Steve Scalise has echoed that yesterday as well. So over the last 2 years, the leadership of the current Republican majority or incoming majority has expressed that they're going to win. But what they don't understand is that the popularity and the interest of the grassroots movement nationally, which just showed an overwhelming level of support for President Trump, actually is demanding that he become the Speaker of the House. Now, it's not for the entire duration of the 2-year cycle in preparation for the 2024 presidential campaign season. It's singularly focused on essentially a 2.5-week blitz effort to use that as a venue to then showcase to the entire country that under the TDS spell, the Trump derangement syndrome spell, and that includes a good portion of the Republican political elite and establishment, as well as many of those on the left. We need to, uncensored on C-SPAN 1, 2, and 3, showcase to the entire country of how the entire political class and mainstream media and big tech censorship manipulated and lied to the American public, where they basically are then they move from hating Orange Man bad to hating the mainstream media even worse. And then at the end of that process, essentially they come out saying, you know what? No longer do I have TDS, but I now have what's called TRS, Trump Reinstatement Syndrome.
There you go. Trump reinstatement syndrome. I love it. Now, I've noticed that, we're seeing this weird thing happen where we're starting to see certain people or entities out there trying to pit Ron DeSantis and Trump against each other. What's your take on that? I mean, I feel like this seems to be some kind of an intentional way to divide the grassroots MAGA movement.
I mean, that's the elephant in the room, literally, figuratively, and I guess GOP wise. Anyway, so bottom line is we have to go all the way back to essentially 2014, 2016. No one with 70, 65% of the Republican base did not want Trump to be the president. He ended up winning because of the popular support and what he stood for. And that has never stopped since the time he was nominated and became the president. And forces within the senior leadership of the Republican Party have not stopped trying to push him out of the political ecosystem. And I'm talking about names like Mike Pence, the Liz Cheneys, the Dick Cheneys, the George Bushes of the world, the Chief Justice John Roberts that denied a lot of court cases from appearing before his court to go ahead and clean up our illegally certified electoral system. The entire establishment core, specifically within the Republican establishment, Paul Ryan, who heads up and influences what goes on faux news and what does not. Even Tucker Carlson is not in a position to really tell the truth, although he does have leverage since he has the biggest audience on faux news. He still does not quite have enough leverage to talk about what the Patriot base, essentially the entire country, wants to hear, which is we're still not over, and we're never going to be over the November 3rd, 2020 election until it's absolutely decertified and the truth comes out. And so, I mean, these people that I just mentioned are the ones behind the movement to get Ron DeSantis in place to take over the massive wave of support that President Trump has. Now, one thing that I think we were cut off on before we cut off last time was that the same people that I just mentioned, in order to get DeSantis propped up to a certain level to be able to contend with President Trump, is that they have to diminish and somehow shape that President Trump does not have influence. Well, let me remind you, folks, and this is directly to you, Mikey Pence. This is directly to you, Paulie Ryan, and your folks there. Guess what? Your influence at faux news is going down at such a rapid pace because you have folks like Millie Weaver, Right Side Broadcasting Network, Epoch TV, Real America's Voice, OAN, and the list goes on. And guess what we did to you in the primaries? We absolutely obliterated the J6 cover-up committee lackeys. I call it the Mike Pence J6 cover-up committee because we just totally convicted Lizzie Cheney. The Court of Public Opinion in Wyoming convicted her. We also convicted, actually, fugitive on the run, Adam Kinzinger is now fleeing Congress because he's scared to run for re-election because you know what's going to happen to him. We would have convicted him. And we just had two more members of that J6 cover-up committee absolutely decimated in the Court of Public Opinion. One, Elaine Luria in Virginia Beach, crushed by Jennifer Kiggins, who is now going to take over her congressional seat. And then you had several witnesses, to include a sitting Speaker of the House from Arizona, being convicted by his constituents for participating in this J6 cover-up committee. Now,
Well,
this is
well,
all
Ivan,
done
Ivan.
amidst all the censorship.
Speaking of J6, though, what's going to happen once the Republicans take control of the House or even the Senate as well? Are we going to see them try to shut down the J6 committee, or are we going to see them try to take over the J6 investigation and then possibly actually get to the bottom of who's responsible for January 6th?
I would love to volunteer pro bono as America's law offensive coordinator. I may change my middle name to hashtag law offensive coordinator for the legislative branch in order to be able to do the following. One, we have our Speaker Trump. Two is across all 30 committees on C-SPAN 1, 2, and 3, uncensored, right? They can't censor C-SPAN. So if Trump becomes the speaker, he's able to get his message completely out the truth. Now, and then also through Truth and Getter and all these other free speech platforms. And I wanted to close out with this. Amidst all the censorship, Carrie Lake still decimated her opponent that was backed by Paul Ryan and Mike Pence. Absolutely obliterated. She's going to do the same thing in this general election. I suspect that later today we're going to start seeing her leading ahead, and they're at some point they're just going to have to concede because they're not going to want to show how much cheating was attempted, and yet they still lost. And
can you explain, Ivan? Can you explain how does the selection process work for the Speaker of the House? Does somebody have to be an elected representative to be Speaker of the House, or could they theoretically put Trump as the Speaker?
So it's legally, theoretically, I think it's a moral and legal and an ethical obligation and duty in order to get our country back on track to elect President Trump as the Speaker of the House, to correct the record. And this is how it works constitutionally. If you look at Article 1 of the Constitution, it states that a Speaker is elected by the House. That is the only guidance that the Constitution talks about. And when you go onto the Speaker's website, the historical component, it even says that a speaker is voted by the House. And up until this point, it has always been a member of the House, but it is not required that it be a member of the House. Same thing goes for the Senate pro temp on the Senate side. So when we win the House, we'll have Speaker Trump. And if you want to take a look, some details of the momentum of that movement, we're going to be posting up later today on the website, speakertrump.info, INFO. And you're hearing this first, unless you've been following my Telegram. We just put that up, and you're going to start seeing some of the folks in the House, as well as key influencers throughout the nation, patriot influencers, that have been briefed, that are contemplating and considering actually going down this path. And I think you're going to start seeing this movement really escalating into today, up to and reaching its apex into Tuesday's announcement by President Trump. And you're going to I think you're going to like the announcement that's going to happen on Tuesday. But if you want it to be really good, all I ask for is go ahead and take a look, convince yourself, and you don't have to be an attorney. You just have to be a human being that knows how to read. Take a look at the constitutional provisions, the framework. See that you don't have to be a current member of the House. You just need to have somebody that has the courage, the gravitas, and the fearlessness to correct the record of what just happened over the last 2 years from the Chinese Communist Party, from within our government system. We need somebody that has bold, decisive leadership that can push back under this corrupt DOJ, FBI.
Well, I
Crossfire
think if
hurricanes
they
flying,
Ivan,
all of it getting
I
exposed.
think if they actually selected Trump as Speaker of the House, that would definitely tick off the left big time. I mean, they would melt down. But
No, no,
do you
it
think that
would be
that's actually the best
worse for the right.
strategic thing? Do you think it's the most strategic thing? Because the J6 investigations has a lot to do with Trump, right? So wouldn't they say, oh, he's trying to take it over so that he can control the outcome of the investigation? Whereas if you had somebody else who might be a little bit
Well, he
more
never had a chance
impartial,
to rebut anything that they presented.
that's true. That's true. I
Imagine
mean,
you only have a prosecution presenting its best evidence, and what happens to that prosecution? They get convicted by the people watching it. And so now we have the opportunity to rebut everything.
right.
It is the most strategic thing I think he can do. I mean,
Right. I mean, I agree. It definitely needs to be rebutted. What I'm saying
here's
is,
the
do you think
sequence of
Trump
events,
should
if
be
I
the
may.
speaker to do it, or do you think that it should be another Republican that the American people trust, that know that they're actually going to do a fair investigation, allow Trump and his side to be heard, and allow for all this evidence and information about Ray Epps and other individuals to come
I
forward?
argue that it has to be Trump as speaker because we will be able to juxtapose that Speaker Pelosi hid fake committee, whereas he as speaker, he's basically he wasn't afforded an opportunity to go against his accusers. So as part of this process, you're going to have hearings that go into. Let me start off this way. First thing he does is he appoints his sergeant at arms. That
Right.
sergeant at arms releases the 14,000 hours of tape from January 6th to get to the truth of January 6th. That sergeant at arms investigates January 6th and the 5th, the pipe bombs. He investigates and oversees the FBI and DOJ's role and all of that. Number two, he gets to pull back all the nonviolent criminal referrals conducted by the previous sergeant at arms and speaker as it relates to January 6th, and then bring those in as witnesses out of the DC gulag. In some instances, it may be appropriate to bring them on as staffers to go ahead and adjudicate the proper truth of what happened on January 6th. Next, we go into hearings to nullify the first impeachment. At the conclusion of the nullification of that first impeachment hoax vote, we get to censure and possibly remove and do criminal referrals and ethical complaints on those impeachment managers. As well as during impeachment hoax 2, we then go ahead and do the same thing, file criminal referrals to those impeachment hoax personnel. I'm talking about folks like Eric Swallowwell, Adam Bullshiff, Jerry Poopy Pants Nadler, right? So all of them get to face the consequences because we only had the opportunity to exterminate Lizzie Cheney and Elaine Luria and Denver Riggleman, who was a staffer, and Rusty Bowers, who was a witness, right? Now we get to exterminate the rest of them. When I say exterminate, peacefully, patriotically, politically, and then through the criminal system.
Right, right. They need to be held
Right?
accountable. And we saw these Democrats talking about, well, should Trump be criminally held responsible for what he didn't do pertaining to January 6th? He didn't tell people to go home soon enough, right? That was their argument. But Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, they did not have their sergeant of arms have the National Guard there, and there was an opportunity for them to do that, and they decided against that. So I think that both Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell need to be investigated for their negligence at the very least, or their conspiracy to essentially allow something like this to happen, because we know that
when you become the president, or excuse me, when you become the Speaker of the House, you get full immunity. So the DOJ gets placed on pause. So when you're not on defense,
Oh, there you
you're on
go.
offense, right? So that's why it's such a strategic move. I don't think anybody's briefed him on all the components of this being a total upside move with zero risk involved, and he has the votes to do it. I've been behind the scenes talking to members of the Freedom Caucus, members of the incoming freshman class, and then when you look at, if you go to Ballotpedia or any of these sites and look at the list of people that President Trump has endorsed and see how many have won, Kevin McCarthy, if we the people and through this campaign, basically all we really technically need is, example, if we only get 220 Republicans in the House, that means that we only need 6 or 7 that say, hey, Kevin, the only way you're going to become Speaker of the House is if you support the Speaker Trump plan for the first 2.5 weeks of session. Then we will allow you to become the Speaker of the House. If not, good luck. I mean, I don't know what else to say. And we have way over 7 that are willing to go to bat to do this. I'm just telling you, I have communicated. Let's take a look, right? I mean, let's just throw out some names.
Well, what about Herschel Walker? Okay, so I've noticed
That's on the
that.
Senate side.
Yeah, I noticed in the Senate, it's really bizarre that Brian Kemp would get all of these votes, but then Herschel Walker would not be winning essentially when it's like, who's going to just
It
say,
all comes down to the RGA, the NRCC, the NRSC. So those Trump quote unquote endorsed candidates, they didn't win because Trump endorsed them. Or I should say, they supposedly lost because, not because Trump endorsed them, it was because the Republican establishment worked against them. Doug Mastriano, the RGA specifically said, we are not campaigning for him. Glenn Youngkin specifically said, oh, the code for we're working against you in the court of public opinion sounds like he has no chance of winning, or she has no chance of winning. That's code for we're doing everything behind the scenes to guarantee that person's loss.
yeah,
That's it.
it seems odd though, because usually people tend to vote up and down the ballot, either Republican or Democrat. So I find it interesting that, if you look at the numbers here, you see that the Democrat, Raphael, he has 1.9 million around that votes. And then Herschel Walker has also around 1.9 million. And there really is like maybe like a 30,000 ish diff between the two. But then when you
Right.
look
It's
at
a managed selection based on money, based on control of the electoral system. Remember, Brian Kemp, the current governor, controls the system. He used to be the Secretary of State before Brad Raffensperger.
Yeah, and he also was the one that threw Trump under the bus and said that the 2020 election was safe and secure. So, I mean, it seems like, okay, so he's got 2.1 million votes, and then Stacey Abrams has the 1.8. So the Democrats match up pretty well. Okay, Stacey Abrams at 1.8, and then the Democrat Senator Raphael at 1.9. You would think that Herschel Walker would track more closely to Brian Kemp, but we're just not seeing that, and we're seeing that in other
No,
states as
because
well.
here's kind of how it works. So the RGA, Republican Governors Association, pumped massive money into Brian Kemp. Mike Pence endorsed him. Paul Ryan was of the world, right? All that establishment. They did absolutely nothing to support Herschel Walker. Same thing in Pennsylvania. What they were trying to do was do a squeeze play. The NRSC, through Rick Scott, because he chairs it, National Republican Senate Committee, was trying to pump in sufficient money into Oz for him to pull off that victory. And I think Trump knew this, and his staffers. Like the Patriots wanted Mastriano in. To be honest, we could care less about this guy, Oz, right? But at the end of the day, he has an R by his name. And so it was literally the Republican Party was trying to get Oz in, box out Mastriano, and we were trying to get Mastriano in under the coattails of the Republicans that were trying to get Oz in. And in the result, we lose both. So that's kind of what happens, right?
And Pennsylvania has this pattern where they seem to have more voters on election day than actual registered voters. So,
right,
I mean,
you literally have a brain dead human being, half brain dead human being that was selected into that Senate seat. And if that's called ableism, whatever, well, then you need to get him off of the platform. Like, it's
Well,
total
we have a brain
disrespect to
dead
him.
president right now, so
Right. And
apparently
so, I
anything's
mean, just
possible.
I disagree with that characterization. The P is silent. You currently have the Chinese Communist Party's ambassador to the U.S. squatting in the White House. But I think I know who you're referring to.
Yeah, Joe Biden, the guy who looks like
Jiden.
he
It's pronounced Jiden.
Joe Biden, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, Ivan, okay, we're seeing this weird situation here in Arizona where, you know, shouldn't these ballots be counted already? I mean, Florida, despite
Right.
having
Going
dealt with a
back to that, yeah.
category 5 hurricane, they were able to have all their votes counted on election night. And now, okay, we're going on
I'm
what? Is
glad
it
you
a day or
mentioned
two
that.
later that they still have not given us all the results for Arizona?
So, guess who the chairman of the Republican Governors Association is? It's a guy by the name of Doug Ducey, the governor of Arizona. Now you see why they're taking forever? They're trying to figure out the best glide path to either cheat to win or basically delay and slow roll. Because in some aspects, if you just confuse the opposition, it buys you time to plan and do things ahead of them. So right now they're creating confusion. I argue that Governor-elect Carrie Lake needs to announce that she's the governor-elect, because based on what we all know and based on the momentum of counting the day of ballots, she just needs to basically say, you know what, based on this momentum, I'm governor-elect. And then it's up to you to show that I'm not, because we all know that she won. And then that momentum is also going to pull Secretary of State-elect Mark Hincham, which he's already secured it. It's just a matter of them having to count it. Also, Blake Masters is, I say, a very confident, very high probability that he's also going to pull it through, because we already see that Abe Hamadeh. Now, even if, say, for example, Blake, the Senate seat, is, it's going to take a while for them to count and figure out that he ended up winning. I argue that on Saturday, all four of them need to hold a rally on Saturday stating that a clean sweep victory. Because at that point, we're going to see Abe Hamadeh already secured victory. He's going to be the attorney general. He's going to get to the bottom of 2020 and all the shenanigans that are going on right now in 2022. The Secretary of State is also going to get to the bottom of it. And Governor Carrie Lake is also going to amplify through her platforms of what just happened. So I really don't see a mechanism that or a scenario where Blake Masters loses under that electoral infrastructure. I just don't see it.
Right. I mean, it doesn't make any logical sense.
Of the world and Brnoviches are going to try to use their last month in office to claim that there may be a loss there, because they're trying to frame that Trump is not popular. But guess what? The numbers don't lie. Massive performance this cycle. Massive.
Well, it would have been even better had we not seen these really mysterious ballot dumps happening. Mike Lindell, earlier on his show this morning at Frank's Speech, he actually showed some very interesting graphs, because he has a lot of analysts monitoring the election right now, and you just see these jumps that happen. I mean, one of them even pointed out was a 1,000,000 vote jump that happened. It levels out, and then it goes right back down 1,000,000 votes, almost like, oh, it was a computer error, but
it goes like this.
right.
Oh wait, we went too much.
Yeah.
Let's go back.
Oh, we accidentally put too many zeros. Oops, we gotta. I mean, this is ridiculous. I think that we should be seeing a red wave here, but we're not seeing it.
Folks, clear your Saturday in 2 days, especially if you're in the Phoenix area. Just be ready to celebrate in a massive way. And then for those folks that are in New Hampshire, get ready for every Saturday. You're going to probably have some rallies going on. And this is another subject we may get into later, calling on the impeachment of Governor Sununu.
Well, there you go. Well, I hope
aside from that, go to the website speakertrump.info for details.
There you go. Well, I hope that we get to the bottom of all of these election discrepancies that have been happening, especially with these voting machines. I know in Arizona, Maricopa County, some of these other counties, they were having ballot printer errors where they weren't able to read the ballots or whatever. I mean, this is ridiculous, okay? And these are the seats that count, right? I think that they're terrified. They don't want the Republicans to take back the House and the Senate because at that point, it will
The
be
Democrats
insane.
and Republicans don't want Trump and America First candidates to take over. That's it.
Exactly.
And
Th-
we are.
Yep. They don't want the American people taking back their government. And we're seeing that happen across the country. And, I think that we need to just figure out a way to go back to paper ballots, right? So the whole justification is, oh, electronic voting machines make it easier, right? Well, how easy is it if it's taking multiple days to count votes in Arizona? Hmm? Like, come on now. I think we could have done a hand count
It's
faster
total
than this.
incompetence. It's incompetence. It's nefarious. It's nefarious intent.
It definitely is nefarious intent. Well, I hope that we do something about it, definitely. And I hope that you're right, Ivan. I hope that someone will elect Trump as Speaker of the House and we will
So
absolutely see the most
watch
epic
Joe
meltdown.
Kent's congressional race. Washington's 3rd congressional district. Right now, it shows that he's losing, but every day, as they're counting day of ballots, he is getting 1 percentage point closer to securing victory. And if I was a betting guy, I would bet that he's going to be very instrumental and vocal, along with other Freedom Caucus members, which I won't name right now, but there are quite a few, and it's growing by the day. And you're going to start seeing some hints at who those individuals are on that website that are on board with securing the nomination for Speaker Trump, at least for the first part of the 118th Congress.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ivan, for joining me here today. And thank you for giving us that amazing analysis. I know you definitely follow this stuff very closely. And you seem to have a plan. Remind people again where they can go to find your plan.
Yeah, if you go to the website speakertrump.info, short form for information, so speakertrump.info, and you're going to see essentially the 5 main reasons on why it needs to be done, because we're going to go ahead and go after those folks using the mechanism known as Nuremberg 2.0. We're going to go after big tech to reinstate the First Amendment. Number 3, we're going to get to the bottom of remedying 2020, that election. Number 4, we're going to go ahead and make sure that all of the illegal spying on basically the FBI and DOJ is held to account through this mechanism. And you can take a look at all 5 reasons, and then there's another 17 supporting kind of bullets on why this is an awesome plan.
Awesome.
And
Thank
it's not
you.
for me. It's somebody else that put those together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ivan. I'm Millie Weaver.
Thanks, Millie.
And this is the end of the Millennial Millie Show. Signing off. Okay, so that was for my show on Frank's Beach. But if you want to kind of go into a little bit of overtime here with people and take some questions and answers, guys, just
Yes,
kidding.
absolutely.
You guys thought I was ending the stream, but I'm not. Okay. All right. So
I want to hear questions.
let's do some Q&A. I'm looking at the chat right now and it's going really fast. So put your questions and answers, guys. If you guys have any questions that you want to ask Ivan about the plan that he's laid out, about what could happen and how it would play out if Trump became Speaker of the House. I mean, who would be the one to nominate him right now? Like, say they take over, who would be the one to nominate him?
The way it's done is that the majority party caucus is really the one that elects who the speaker is. So they're going to go into closed door session. Right now they're negotiating behind the scenes, but then also so are we. We're basically getting this discussion out there. And, one person basically presents it, and then they got to see if they have the votes.
I even thought about that earlier.
Votes for speakership, because the whole body has to vote. You got to have at least 218 to vote.
Right, 218 to vote. So, and, I thought about that earlier, Ivan, when you said they're meeting behind the scenes and they're making decisions. I'm like, Is that what we're seeing? Like, we're seeing the election on pause. It seems like we find ourselves at these pauses where it could go either way, and it almost seems like to me, like, is the establishment meeting behind the scenes right now, haggling out and, making a deal? Like, what is going on? Why does it seem like we just stop right before we get a definitive result where it can go either way? It's like they leave it open-ended for them to then negotiate for a day or two about what they're gonna allow the
Yeah, because
results to be.
here's the deal: you have the Democratic bloc, and then you have the Rhino bloc, and you have an ever increasing Patriot bloc. While the Patriot bloc can't dictate who the speaker or who the majority leader is going to be, they have enough power to guarantee that the leader of that Rhino bloc does not become the speaker or the Senate majority leader. And that's the leverage that they have in the House, way more than even in the Senate. So all you need is that block to basically say, Kevin, for you to become speaker, you have to have our vote. If not, then you get like, you know what I mean?
So I've got a
Here's what we
question,
propose.
Ivan. I've got a question from one of the listeners. They said, Wayne Bryant, how will you get rid of Dominion and rhinos? So if we take the House and the Senate, could we get rid of the Dominion machines? Could we do an actual investigation into the elections?
So here's how it works with the machines. When Kerry Lake, Mark Fincham, Abe Hamada win, well, they already won. When they go into office in January, the very first thing that they're going to do is not only decertify the 2020 election, like Mark Fincham will, right? But they're also going to look at and do a deep dive into the machines using their discretionary authority and position of authority in the government to prove to the entire nation of what actually happened, because they're going to own it. They're going to own the machines. So unlike what happened to Tina Peters, they're going to do Tina Peters of Mesa with Mesa on steroids so that it educates the rest of the country to demand the removal of the machines.
Ah,
The component there to address that problem is going to come from.
okay.
The second part, rhinos. Speaker Trump.
Someone said,
and President pro tempore General Flynn.
what is the soonest that Trump could become speaker? That was a question from Edward Hill.
January 3rd is when the 118th Congress starts at noon.
Okay. So in January.
What else?
Let's see. Any other questions? Do you think Brazil will be the start of reversing the corruption here?
I haven't been tracking Brazil as much, but it looks like the military just basically. I saw one report. I'm not sure if it's accurate. The Brazilian military just said that the election was okay and legit. I don't know. It's obviously we don't live in a vacuum. We got 193 countries, 192 other than the U.S. So Brazil is one of the bigger countries, which may have an influence on how things happen here. But I think the more influential impact on how our future is going to look like. Watch Arizona.
Julie Entrikin, sorry, I probably butchered your name, said, why would Trump want to become speaker?
Yeah, sure. So I would ask President Trump, here's a message to you directly. Sir, do you want a way to rebut all the impeachment hoaxes, expose the lying by the deep state actors by name, location, place, and transgression? Do you want to essentially show the lies of the media, of Mueller, of Eric Ciaramella, his attorneys Mark Zaid and Andrew Bakaj, Alexander Vindman? The list goes on, right? Do you want to have immunity from being persecuted and prosecuted? Do you want to essentially suck the oxygen out of the room of the entire political conversation in the United States and globally? Do you want to be able to do that without being censored If you want that to happen, why not become the Speaker of the House for 2.5 weeks, from January 3rd to January 20th?
So someone just asked that they just jumped on. Has Arizona finished the count yet? And no, they have not finished the count. It's still stuck at 70%. And that's really why I'm concerned is there's no reason that yesterday it was yesterday morning, early morning when I woke up, it was stuck at 66% reporting and now it's literally stuck at 70%. So why is it taking so long for them to count these ballots? Okay, this is ridiculous. It should not be stuck at 60%.
It is a it's a political struggle right now between those loyal to Carrie Lake and the America First movement, Secretary of State Fincham, elect anyway. Those America First candidates, their volunteers, election workers, and attorneys are in a basically a knife fight in Maricopa County to make sure that the election counting is done lawfully. However, for those that are currently in power, the Democrats in Maricopa and the rhinos, Doug Ducey's of the world and Brnovich's of the world in Arizona, and the McCain cabal, they are doing everything in their power to keep power. And that means you saw Lizzie Cheney go in there and try to work against Carrie Lake. You saw Cindy McCain, right? It's literally they're using all their discretionary power to try to secure a victory that they know they're losing. So, I mean, that's really it. They're doing the inevitable.
Okay, somebody asked why would Trump be speaker for only 2 weeks? Why not longer?
What's that?
Somebody asked why would Trump be speaker for only 2 weeks? Why not longer than 2 weeks?
If he wants to be longer, I mean, it's we're negotiating here, right? So for 2.5 weeks on January. So here's what happens. Let me kind of go into what happens up from TDS to TRS. We then move to impeaching Biden and Harris because we're going to have Garrett Ziegler and all these other actors out there that have secured all the evidence on the Hunter Biden laptop and all the other criminal activity from both of those individuals. After they're impeached, then what happens? The Speaker of the House becomes the president, right? Why not have President Trump become the president again at the earliest moment, which would be January 20th, and yet still have the ability to run again for 2024? And that date is January 20th constitutionally, because that is the midpoint of the current term of the current resident, known as the CCP ambassador, Jiden. If he did it earlier, then that would constitute a constitutional term. If he did it later, then that's possible. That's fine. But I think we can knock everything out in 2.5 weeks. I have the book to be able to provide on kind of what committee's doing what, who's chairing it, who's on the committees, and then who's going to be witnesses on both on the prosecution side, defense, and then what questions need to be asked to expose the country to the truth to get them from TDS to TRS.
All right, so I guess my question then, Ivan, is my question is why would we want Trump to do it for just 2 weeks? But then also, um, if it was just 2 weeks, who is going to be Speaker of the House after Trump is Speaker of the House then? I guess that's my question.
Right. Well, that's the whole negotiating tactic. In order to get Kevin McCarthy's buy-in and the rest of the caucus, you basically present them with a carrot that, hey, once you support this, the Speaker Trump option for 2.5 weeks, Kevin, then you're going to be the Speaker of the House, and then you get to decide what the House does from that point on, because Trump is going to be president. Under this plan, you're going to see a General Flynn as the vice president. We haven't gotten into the details of how that would look, but it really hinges upon having 51 in the Senate, right? So we can address that later, probably in a couple weeks, and maybe at the conclusion of the runoff in Georgia. But that's kind of how it would work.
So you think General Flynn would be the Speaker then? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, no. Senate pro tempore, if we get 51 in the Senate.
Okay. If we
So at the
get
same time that I propose that at the same time Speaker Trump is Speaker, or President Trump is Speaker of the House, from January 3rd through the 20th, uh, should we secure 51 Senate seats, then I think that we should have a Sempor, General Flynn. And unless you want me to go into another discussion on that, that's kind of might be for a separate discussion for later.
right.
Because we're still not quite sure if we're going to get that 51. But assuming we do, same rules apply in the Senate as they do for the Speaker of the House. The Senate pro tem is the figurehead leader of the Senate when the president of the Senate is not in the Senate chambers. Gets to appoint the sergeant at arms. The sergeant at arms releases the tapes on the Senate side, right? And then goes into full investigative mode on what happened on January 6th. And I propose that Senate creates 3 new committees. One, the big tech and big media accountability and First Amendment Committee, First Amendment Reinstatement Committee, headed up by Josh Hawley and Blake Masters when he secures that victory. A second committee, which will be called the Nuremberg 2.0 Committee, headed up by Ron Johnson and Rand Paul. And then you're going to have the third committee called the Chinese Communist Party Detox Committee of America, headed up by Tom Cotton and Mark Wayne Mullen.
Okay.
So yeah, I've looked into that plan. We can go into detail later, but for now, I think now that we've pretty much secured the House side, I think that's where the focus needs to be.
Well,
On the discussion.
You guys, just for a little bit of context, I mean, Ivan talks to a lot of these people behind the scenes, so he's pretty well connected in. And so I think that these are like best case scenario situations here. Like if everything goes as good as it could go, this is what could happen.
Yeah, I don't
you know,
speak
you were
on
kind of
behalf of anybody. I'm just telling you what the best case scenario should be.
right. And you were kind of giving us a good idea of what was going to happen leading up to January 6th and the potentials there. And that's how I really kind of realized right away that the storming of the Capitol event happened. I'm like, well, this is just to shut down the plan that Ivan was talking about. This is to shut down what Rudy Giuliani was talking about when he was up there in his speech, that how they were going to have the investigations of the elections take place for, what is it, 10 days? And they were going to have hearings in the separate House and Senate chambers.
Yep.
And then they were going to
Yep.
reconvene. And then at that point, we were going to have gotten to what was going on with the election results and the machines and everything else. But see, the timing of J6 was too perfect for the establishment, which Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell left the doors wide open, so to speak. And
Right.
then the whole thing, the narrative flipped, everything shifted to Trump and his insurrection and, all these Republicans that were once wanting to reevaluate the election and to not cast their ballots or their slate for Biden. They then backed out and all cast their slates for Biden. So we still have that. It needs to get to the bottom of it.
Be able to get to the bottom of all of that with Speaker Trump appointing his sergeant at arms, General Flynn, Senate pro tem, appointing his Senate sergeant at arms, thus owning the Capitol Police Board with those 2 seats, to then get to the full story of what happened on January 6th, to include Nancy Pelosi, her daughter Alexandra Pelosi, her son-in-law's Michael Voss's role, as well as John Sullivan, Ray Epps, the pipe bomber at the DNC, RNC, Mike Pence, his
The
Secret
sunrise
Service
Zoom
detail,
calls. Don't forget about that.
all of that. And you're going to be testifying, explaining all of that, Millie.
Yeah.
As part of the committee structure.
Right. The sunrise Zoom calls, for those of you who don't know, where we literally had leftist protest groups, the head of BLM, Sunrise Movement, Shutdown DC, other Antifa organizations, all meeting and plotting to take over government buildings and having a map of the Capitol building. And they were literally meeting with DHS size employees, senior executive officials, people high in government. We did a background on a lot of these people. Many of them are actually married to FBI agents. I mean, it is bad. It's a complete subversion. And this took place while Trump was a sitting president. And right before the election, they were plotting these activities. And they mentioned January 6th by date as one of the dates for their Capitol disruption. So, I mean, this is stuff that needed to be heard in the J6 Select Committee, but we know they would never let it be heard because the Democrat Party is closely linked with these groups and these people.
And
AOC
guess
appears
what?
in those calls with
Under
them.
this plan, we can uncensored 24/7 have witnesses like you, me. I was never called. I was begging to be called to explain what happened over the course of November 3rd through January 6th. But no, they were afraid because I think they knew I was going to do to the rest of them what we did to Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and a couple of the other committee members. But I guess they're delaying the inevitable.
You know,
It's going to happen.
I think that the media's really been trying to make this out as though this was a failure, that Trump backing all these candidates, this is a failure. How is it a failure? From what it seems, the Republicans are at least going to take the House, possibly the Senate. Once they take the House, that's when all these investigations can kick off. And they're terrified. I think they're quivering in their boots. And I think that's why they're trying to create and foment division within the grassroots MAGA movement, because they know that the grassroots people support both Trump and DeSantis. So what are they doing? Trying to pit the two against each other. And
Exactly.
it needs to stop. Both Trump and DeSantis should not be engaging with each other in any way, because
if Trump's
it's
busy
not.
being the Speaker of the House, he doesn't need to address anything about DeSantis because guess what? If Trump is Speaker of the House, no one even knows DeSantis exists or anybody else because the entire complex is going to observe the consequence creation of all of the cabal, media, tech, and both parties are going to face the consequences that the whole country wants. And can I close with one thing, Millie?
Sure, go ahead.
I just got a text message from a friend, and she says, and this is to not because of me. This is to use for the listeners to kind of help motivate you to get involved and engage in getting the truth out. So it says she writes here, "You're a lot like Elon Musk. You know that. Facts. Unstoppable force meets unmovable object. They thought all the January 6th committee stuff would scare you and you'd sit down and shut up. You did not. One person. Holy crap. I'm only one guy with a voice. But guess what? I'm fearless. So educate yourselves, each one of you. Become fearless. Get out of your comfort zone. And that's the fastest path to getting things back on track. Anytime somebody says they tried to blackpill you and say, oh, they're not going to do that, you need to flip the script and say, they are going to do that because you're going to guarantee it. That's it. Because guess what? Kevin McCarthy is one dude. That's it.
Yep.
Let's do it.
I mean, I think that we have seen a lot of people being pretty fearless and brave. We saw people turning up in record numbers. I think that, what they're trying to do between Trump and DeSantis, though, you see some of these, they call themselves conservative pundits or influencers on social media. You see them out there now trashing Trump, and they're all like, oh, let's just have DeSantis as president. And you know what? That's all fine and dandy, but there's no reason why DeSantis couldn't be 2028, right? There's no reason why DeSantis needs to be right now.
They're trying to reframe the question and the problem. The problem that we're currently in is that America is in a constitutional crisis. Our electoral system and our officials have literally conducted illegal activity over at a minimum the last 6 years that we're in a position to remedy. Ron DeSantis does not have the passion, knowledge, interest in order to be able to go after that. And he's going to be leveraged out of actually exposing that corruption. President Trump is the only one, and General Flynn as well, are the two key leaders nationally that are in a position to expose the total corruption that has rotted our entire system from both parties. So for me personally, I'm about the truth, and I could care less where the consequences fall. Democrat, Republican, ideally both, so that we can cleanse the system, kind of restart from scratch, and then come out much stronger and better than where we have been. That's it.
Right. Definitely. I mean, I know we've got a lot of people here in the chat. Some people are doing great questions. I saw somebody in there asking about this why the super chat is turned off. Guys, it's because I've been demonetized on these platforms, so that's why. So any other questions on here about the election? I think that the reason why they're trying, like I said, you've got some of these people out there talking bad on Trump, saying, "Oh, just go with DeSantis," is because they're trying to create that infighting. They're trying to fracture the base.
They're trying to protect themselves from exposure.
But then they're also saying, well, DeSantis did really well in Florida, but in some of these other states, the candidates that Trump backed, they didn't do as well. Well, there's multiple reasons for that. DeSantis, his state, he put in an agency that oversaw elections. They got rid of a lot of this shady mail-in box stuff that many of these other states that are swing states still have. Also, if you look at
received over 1 million more votes in 2020 than DeSantis did
yes,
2 days ago.
he did. He did receive more, but it's also important to note why we might see this big landslide in Florida for DeSantis is because Florida has an older population. If you look at the state of Florida's like their average for age, it's older because a lot of people that go to Florida, they go there to retire. If you actually look at the massive voting block that turned out for Gen Z, right? The 18 through 28 or 29-year-olds, they voted predominantly Democrat, overwhelmingly Democrat, almost 80%. It was like 70 something percent they voted Democrat. So some of these other states, they're going to have a lot more younger people and they aren't going to have as many older people. Older people seem to be wiser. They're not, they're more hip to the dangers of communism. They're more hip to the beauty of capitalism. And so in these other states where you see that massive Gen Z turnout, that might be an influence from TikTok, from social media dominance, from all the censorship on social media. So we might be seeing that play into it a little bit.
I think the crux of all of it, the number one reason is that we have an RNC problem, not a Trump problem. That's right. It.
Yeah. We do. And the right now we're at war over the RNC. We're at war over the GOP. The people, the grassroots movement, the MAGA people or whatever Biden called them, MAGA Americans are trying to take over the Republican Party. And the rhinos, the establishment, like the class, Republicans like that. So this is a clear battle. They want to try to get rid of Trump by any means necessary, even if it means trying to pit him and DeSantis against each other. When we're perfectly fine with DeSantis being the governor of Florida, he does a great job as a Florida governor. I see the best case scenario here. If we were a smart strategic party, we would all get behind Trump big time. We would find a really good, strong running mate, like a VP that would not represent establishment. Okay, like Pence did.
I already have the plan for that. If you want me to discuss that, since we're talking on that subject.
Right. Yeah, you could discuss your plan, and then we have Trump then endorse DeSantis for a run in 2028. That would be the best case scenario.
So after we impeach Biden and Harris and or decertify them based on what the states do from 2020, as we have Speaker Trump in office as Speaker and General Flynn as Senate Pro Temp, the next line of succession is the Speaker becomes President on January 20th, and then the Senate Pro Tempore becomes the Vice President. That's simple. That's it.
Right.
What are your questions?
Okay, we've got a lot of questions here I'm looking at. We've got questions here. Somebody asked me, how does a voting machine drop 90 votes? Yeah, that is a good question. I think the answer lies in the question itself as a rhetorical question. How does that happen? It shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be seeing negative votes happening. I mean, do you have an explanation for this, Ivan? Why we're seeing votes go down?
The question is, why are we not owning the electoral system to make sure it's legitimate and clean? So if you haven't been involved as a poll worker, election observer, then I need to look myself in the mirror and say, which I do every day, I'm like, why am I not doing more to make sure that my electoral system is is squared away, like clean. So I look at myself, and every day I'm in front of the mirror right here in the hotel room. It's my fault.
Right. The people need to become active. But even if the people are sitting there watching the ballots, watching everything happen, I went and voted. The lady who was standing there in front of the machine, she didn't see what I bubbled in on my ballot. I just stuck it in the machine. And, so if something funny is happening inside the machines, the people can't see that. And in fact, these machine companies, they're saying that their code is proprietary. People have even tried suing to be able to look inside the machines and analyze the code to make sure there aren't a bunch of back doors or ways that are vulnerable for hackers to get in. And they say, sorry,
great
you can't.
to fix this is once we get Carrie, Mark, and Abe in office in Arizona, that is going to be the absolute cleansing of our machine system nationally. Because the same machines that are used in Arizona are going to be exposed nationwide. And you're going to see a lot of lawsuits and, kind of like Mike Lindell has said, he's going to melt down the machines and they're going to turn into prison bars.
There you go. And maybe that's why we're seeing this long pause.
That's why they're fighting so hard.
Right. This long
because
pause.
the RNC is in on it.
They're like, yeah, we're not gonna let this happen. The DNC, the RNC are meeting probably in secret right now. Like, how do we get out of this situation here? Because we're not gonna be able to rig elections.
Nothing secret. Come on, Millie. You always have to have a network of people listening in.
Yeah, but there are networks where you can't listen in. So thanks to QUX. Because guess what? You know what happened on QX? Okay, so just to let you guys know, I do want to kind of give you guys an update since we're going in this direction right now. Well, maybe we aren't, but I am. Now, on QX TV, we got the Lindell TV people to put the Lindell stream on there. And so what's crazy is you guys can watch Lindell TV now on QUX. How awesome is that? So during the election night coverage, their entire site went down. frankspeech.com was down. The whole site was down. And I was talking to the phone with them while they were, in studio streaming or whatever. I was talking to one of the people on the show, had me on FaceTime, sitting on the phone, sitting on the desk talking to me. And I'm like, they told me, hey, the whole system site's down right now. I said, well, it's probably not down on QUX. And they're really, well, go check and see. So I turned on the QX box and I looked at the feed. I'm like, yep, sure enough, it's unaffected, completely unfazed. Lindell TV was coming in, crisp and clear, perfectly fine. Yet their whole site was down and they were just like mind blown. Like, what? How is that happening? How in the world is it happening? Well, several times we've done we've been able to demonstrate, let's just say that when sites are attacked or DDoS attacked or any of that, QX is impervious. It's still going. You can't mess with this private hardware network here. So take that into consideration, guys. You might want to get on an electronics device here where, say they try to take down sites, all these other things. And Lindell TV is just one of the first streams. We're working with other media organizations right now to get them streamed in there. But anyone actually that gets a QX box can actually go onto QX.tv and you can actually live stream yourself. So you can create an account, you can put video content up there. You can become a creator. You can actually, if you're a small business owner, you can essentially show your store and your products on there. You can sell products on there. It's revolutionary. You can actually advertise on other people's videos. So maybe if you guys have your businesses at home there, you guys can advertise your business on MillennialMillie show, or maybe advertise on Lindell TV. All those things are possible on QUX, guys. So definitely check it out. Get on there. This is disruptive technology. That's what it's called. Disruptive technology, guys. Become a content creator, right? Put your videos up there. Become somebody who live streams, like Lindell TV is live streaming right now. Become a merchant, right? Become an advertiser. You can also engage in private encrypted transactions using QUX tokens on a secure network, guys. This is huge because of the coming social credit score, the monitoring of everyone's transactions through Visa, MasterCard, Discover, all of that. So go to QX.com, or sorry, QX.tv, click the shop button up here or click get started. Buy your QX box today. Also, put in promo code Millie and you will be able to get $15 off your QX TV box. The whole goal here, guys, is we need to get enough people off of their system. Sorry, we need to get enough people off of their system and onto QX, because QX is against data collection. Everything is the way they built this thing out. It's not based on data logging. It's not based on that type of a system where they have data loggers that collect all the data. It's not, because they're not in the business of selling data. They're not in the business of, so why collect it? Why store it? It costs money to store data. You see all these other platforms and companies, social media companies, they have these massive server farms because they're collecting all the data and they have to pay for that to collect data. QX doesn't do that. They don't want to have to pay to store anything they're not going to sell, and they're not going to sell it anyway. So it's based around privacy, absolute privacy and security. That's key. Why? Because all of our data, it gets put into these analytics, right? So these companies, voter analytics companies, etc., they buy the data, and then what do? They use it to analyze and predict election results. They use it to essentially know how many votes are needed and in what county, in what area, to get the election result they need. All of these phones that we have are like little mini tracking devices, to where they know if you went to the ballot box. They know if you went and voted at the voting location. So the key here is we have to get off of their electronics, and we need to get onto other electronics. QX is revolutionary. Get your QX TV box, guys. Support real tech solutions, okay? And mind you, okay, so you see that Frank Speech has behind, they've got the Frank Speech app commercial on where they're talking about the Frank Speech app. It wasn't even working on their app when it was still working in QX. So Lindell TV was not working on their app while it was still perfectly fine on QX TV. Okay, what more do you need to know there? And you'll be supporting patriot entrepreneurs. You'll be supporting each other being able to build up and create, like I said, your own portals where you can put businesses. It'll be a way for all of you guys here in the comments in the chat here that you own your own business. You can put your business on there and you could be selling products to each other. We could all be working together to build each other up in this unstable economy where we can engage with tokens, we can engage in private secure transactions. This is the real solution. And the reason why we came up with this was because of all the problems we're facing. I'm not the type of person that can just sit by and watch it all and not try to come up with a solution, you know? And I know that's how Ivan is too, Ivan. And that's why you've come up with these plans of action that we can take politically, right? But, we also have to be fighting the tech war. If you look at all the other tech companies out there, they're controlled by
100%.
leftists in Silicon Valley.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, Ivan, do you want to continue talking and taking some questions and answers?
No, I appreciate it. I think we hit about an hour, so
Okay.
I have to go because yes, while there is a plan, it needs to be implemented. So let me make sure that the chances of it happening increase, and that requires not just being on shows.
Right. We have been for quite a while now. All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the Millennial Millie show today. I know we got a pretty good, decent amount of people watching right now. So I just wanted to show you guys QXTV. Get on there. You can watch Lindell TV on there. I'm streaming on there right now. There's other people streaming. Good stuff, good content. Make your own content. You guys can make your own TV channels on there. Break free from the system. Who knows how much longer I'm going to be able to be on YouTube. For all we know, this might be my last video on some of these social media platforms because we dared to talk today about elections. We dared to talk about the vulnerabilities with the machines. We dare to talk about all these things that they want to ban and censor us from. So, this is just the situation we're in right now in our country where it's like we have to be making our own technology. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Thank you so much, Ivan, for joining us on the Millennial Millie Show.
Appreciate you. Yep. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah. All right. Bye bye. All right. You know what? Ivan wanted to get off. Here's one thing I will do.